angry tweet in which he charged, without providing any evidence, that the court's decision would allow rampant, unchecked cheating and induce violence in the streets. Twitter quickly flagged the president's assertions as potentially false, saying that some or all of this content shared in this tweet is disputed and might be misleading regarding the election. So, what is this here that they are alleging? Like, what, from the best, what you can see is, like, what are they trying to say that the Democrats are doing here? Like, what is the allegation, and how much of it is just complete projection in this case?
I don't think there's any specific allegation. I think there's just a swirl of, innuendo about fraud that's just designed to throw chaos into the minds of American voters. There is no, as far as I can tell, there is no actual fraud. Trump was saying that there was fraud weeks and maybe even months ago, before a single vote was even cast, and he's still saying that. So, I don't know whether Americans really believe that there's fraud. Maybe the people, who are his greatest supporters, believe that. But I think a lot of Americans think it's a bunch of hogwash. So, he says a lot of stuff, and we're used to it. So a lot of it goes in one ear and out the other, I think, for a lot of Americans.
Yeah, we are all. Let's hope that's the case. But again, I really think you only really need a few, small group of people. We already had, really kind of surprisingly, the press secretary of the Trump campaign tweeting, or the spokesperson, tweeting out a picture of just a fenced-off section where, in this New York ballot counting area, or wherever it was, where ballots were being counted, and they're like, "What is going on here? We need to be able to observe them counting the ballots." That's what some of the people, there are actually, I think, people out all over the country today, right-wingers going out and saying, "I want to observe the ballots. I want to watch you count them. I want to get right close up in your face without my mask and watch you count the ballots." It's just we will definitely be keeping an eye on that for you all throughout the day. That is for sure. Because that does seem to be a very, very scary situation. That is a tweet that I saw that was like, what in the world is going on?
If I can just interject here, I think what's interesting about a lot of this stuff is that the biggest complaints that Republicans have about voter shenanigans are and where they've actually put their lawsuits are in states that are battleground states, right? They're not worried about election fraud anywhere else in the country.
In this case, it was Philadelphia.
Yeah, well, Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
So I don't really. If they were really concerned about election fraud, maybe they'd be concerned about it everywhere. But no, it's just the battleground states that they care about, which kind of tells you that maybe there isn't election fraud and they're just trying to gin up their base.
Yeah, this is it. This is from the GOP EDO, whatever that means, director for 2020. He is in his Twitter bio, election security. So that's how you know he's legit. More bad things happening in Philly. He writes, Dem election officials have avoided transparency and accountability in every step. Now they're keeping our poll watchers so far from the counting tables, there's no way to actually observe. What are they hiding? This must stop. So it's pretty much just like a fenced-off area that is maybe leaves about 15 to 20 feet away from a massive area where they have just big boxes of envelopes and machines, and where they're clearly going to be reviewing the mail-in ballots or whatever. And it's just just hope that stuff does not escalate and they're mostly unsuccessful. But can you really hope that? I don't know. The president's remarks in Wisconsin echoed his comments earlier in Avoca, Pennsylvania, where he suggested cryptically that the Supreme Court decision could be physically dangerous without explaining what he meant. So physically dangerous. Like, does that in your mind, like, do you think that actually like incites violence or incites fear and tension, and more of a drive among the base to get out to the polls, to question election results?
Yeah, I am concerned about there being violence at polling places today. I have visions of, in states where you can carry concealed weapons, there's going to be, people harassing voters who are in line while they're packing guns, that kind of stuff, I think, is going to happen. And that does really worry me. That actually worries me even more than what the Supreme Court might do.
Especially in places like Philadelphia.
Yeah. I mean, places where there's heavy Democratic turnout. Places like Atlanta and Miami and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, definitely.
Yeah, and especially when there's like a lot of like Republican voters close by to come in and be like, like. Tom Wolf, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, later responded to Trump on Twitter, vowing that Pennsylvanians will not be intimidated and telling the president, "You can't watch us count every vote and have a fair election." Yeah, that is this is like it's how it's always done. Like the Pennsylvania state government counts the Pennsylvania state votes, and that has been good enough for everybody for 270, 50 plus years. So that is the kind of scary thing there. In the last days of the campaign, Trump has focused intensely on Pennsylvania. Republicans had legally challenged the state's plan to accept ballots for up to 3 days after Election Day. So that's a big reason why their votes will not be all counted on Election night. On Friday, the Supreme Court denied a plea from Republicans in the state, asking the court to fast-track a decision on whether election officials could continue receiving absentee ballots for 3 days after November 3rd. The justices said, again, this should be, in my opinion, highlighted in bold here. The justices said the court could revisit the decision after the election. Trump's comments about the court came as he made his last pitch to voters. He also spent Monday airing grievances about the polls, news media, former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the investigation into interference in the 2016 election. I really do get the sense that, I don't know if you're with me on this, that Trump is just more kind of like desperate, more like less confident, more just depressed, really. Like, do you see what I'm seeing there as well? And how do you think that's going to affect how he handles a potential loss?
I don't know. He could go out with a whimper if he loses pretty badly, or he could fight it, or he could try to drum up these phony militias all around the country to protect him at the White House, or he could do really crazy stuff, or he could do nothing and just submit to the results. It's really hard for me to think about what he might do, and I try to push those thoughts out of my mind. I think we just have to wait and see. I think a lot of people think that if the race is really, really close, then he's going to really put up a big stink, and he's not going to want to leave office, and he's not going to concede, and it won't be a peaceful transfer of power. But if it's a pretty strong result in Biden's favor, and it very well could be, I don't think he's going to do anything like that. I think he's going to concede.
Yeah, I think that does seem to make sense. Like, just I feel like it's just kind of he's caught between really wanting to just get out of the White House and not wanting to be a loser, right? So that is the big existential conflict and the kind of tricky bind that he's in here. Trump also, at his first rally, decided to tell the crowd about coronavirus, only in passing, to mock China. Again, literally the issue that most Americans care the most about, and the one that's directly affecting their lives. He mentioned it only in passing to mock China, and began to call on the governor of North Carolina to open the state. Instead, he began with a lengthy complaint about media-sponsored political polls, The crowd was again mostly silent throughout, and he finally wound it down by saying, "I hope I haven't bored you." Like, yeah, he has just been on something else this election day. That is for sure. He pivoted to a litany of familiar complaints. He derided a 2-year investigation into conspiracy about his campaign and Russian officials, and went after Obama. He brought back 2016. Like, again, do you get the sense that there just is like lack of anything new going on, so to speak, in the Trump campaign? Or
yeah, a lot of people have said that the way Trump is doing his campaign this time around versus 2016 is he's not as good a candidate as he was in 2016. He's not as focused. Yeah. He's not drilling in the same messages. This year he seems to be more out there, not trying to win over his base, because obviously the people who go to his campaign events are strongly behind him. He's mostly there to entertain them and almost to give him some kind of therapy, because he loves his adoring fans. And a lot of his supporters are filled with grievances just like he is, and so he gets the biggest rise out of them when he talks about grievances rather than policy, for example. He really has no vision for the next 4 years. He talks about ending the coronavirus epidemic, but he's already claimed that he has done that, bizarrely. Getting the economy back on track, but very vague things, nothing concrete. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to work for him and what doesn't work for him. He has a very peculiar base who seem to be motivated more by a cult of personality than they are about, the policy of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and you think that, I guess, do you think, because you have to imagine, right, like these people are feeling the weight of the pandemic just as everybody is in some way, and maybe, I guess, just the personality is pushing the cult of personality around Trump, and just the obsession with, I guess, as Trump Jr. decided to tweet out as his big closing message before the election, "Make liberals cry again." That seems to be, I guess, largely what is motivating these people at this time, not any of the massive amounts of suffering that's happening all around us, which is kind of insane.
Yeah, and of course we have to also admit that there are plenty of regular rank and file Republicans who don't go to his campaign events, but will hold their nose and vote for him anyway, simply because they are Republicans, right? But there are a number of those kinds of people, particularly women in the suburbs all around the country, who are defecting. So, that's going to be an important element of the Republican vote that could cost him this election.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like the what is behind the that's been probably the biggest shift of the election, just Biden kind of appealing to Trump's support. Like, I don't think, do you think it was anything to do with his personal conduct or his personal behavior, or was it just the coronavirus where women were finally just like, I've had enough with Trump?
I think it's probably a combination of things. I mean, a lot of college-educated folks who live in the suburbs don't like the president's Twitter feed, regardless of the pandemic. But that might not be enough to sway their vote, but it's enough to give them pause. And then when you pile on how he's handled this pandemic, that's what actually, cracked them and changed their vote. So I think it's just a combination of things, and the coronavirus just tipped people over the top.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I think it definitely was just like people, really for a lot of people, like